When Reza gets here, I'll introduce him, but right now I'll start with Terry McDermott. Terry McDermott is a former national reporter for the Los Angeles Times. He's the author of a couple of books, Perfect Soldiers, about the 9/11 hijackers, who they were, why they did it. And his latest, that's just out, right, is 101 Theory Drive. And Reza ASLAN is sliding into place.
Reza's
all right.
in the house.
Reza is in the house.
All right. I had to run all the way across.
I know.
This is very nice to see you, Terry.
Okay.
How's everybody doing? All right.
Terry McDermott, Reza ASLAN. So now I'll give both their bios. So, and Terry's newest book, 101 Theory Drive, A Neuroscientist's Quest for Memory. Reza ASLAN has a fairly unique resume. Born in Iran, immigrated with his family to Enid, Oklahoma. So he's probably a Thunder fan, or would have been then. Degrees in religion from UC Santa Clara, UC Santa Barbara, and Harvard Divinity, and an MFA from the Iowa Writers Program, which is, I just love that resume. His first book, No God But God, The Origins, Evolution, and Future of Islam, offers more than a history, because it's by a guy who can actually write. And his second book, How to Win a Cosmic War, God, Globalization, and the End of the War on Terror, has just been released in paperback under a new name, Beyond Fundamentalism. He's also edited. Has your anthology come out yet?
It comes out November 8th.
November 8th, an anthology, and this you really want to look for because this is pretty unique in American print, I would think. Yeah. Words Without Borders, Writings from the Middle East. Since I just sort of introed that one, what will that anthology, what would people who pick that up find?
Well, let me say that the title of that has also been changed, just because I just like to confuse people. It's called Tablet and Pen now, and it's a collection of writings, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, essays, memoirs, collected over the last 100 years from the Middle East, translated, some of them for the very first time, from Arabic, Persian, Urdu, Turkish. It's an attempt, essentially, to remind people of this incredibly rich literary culture that exists in the Middle East, and maybe to reframe the perceptions of that region away from the images that we see on the media and towards something that's a little bit more, I think, real and more a part of the region.
And what happened to that tradition, though? I mean, people don't read now on the street. Normally, it's weird.
Well,
you can't find a bookstore in entire countries.
It is kind of bad, and this is sort of part of the reason why I think that it's important not just for an English-speaking audience, but I mean I think the audience in the region over there too, to be aware of, these amazing, from Khalil Gibran to Orhan Pamuk and everything in between, Farooq Farrokhzad, Ahmed Shamlou. These are literary giants on the world scale, but people who Americans haven't even heard of, let alone read.
Okay, and what you were just saying, that was Terry McDermott, who has done a lot of traveling in the Middle East, and you just returned recently from?
Just returned from Pakistan and the Gulf.
Okay. A
reporting trip for a magazine piece I'm doing.
Okay, and so he was saying, you don't find bookstores anymore over there. Let me just stay with this for just 1 second, Reza. Having written, and primarily written, about religion, what was this like for you, this experience of, there's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. You are bringing forward and editing and selecting the literature that, for Americans, will probably stand for the current Middle East.
Yeah, and I did take that very seriously. Of course, I've been, inundated with this literature all my life, and I'm pretty well familiar with it, both as just a reader and as an observer of the region. But at the same time, I think it's important that we recognize that, the symbols and metaphors that we've been using in order to build these bridges between, the Western world and the Middle East, the symbols of politics and religion, have utterly failed. They've been a complete disaster. And so I'm of the opinion that if there is to be a quote-unquote bridge built between, the Muslim majority countries and North America and Europe, it's a bridge that can fashion through art, through films, through music, through literature, because those are the things that are universal. Those are the things that people have in common beyond their ethnic or religious or cultural differences. And so not just in the work that I'm doing in this book, but in the work that I'm doing with a company called Boomgen, in which we sort of focus on creative content from or about the Middle East, I'm recognizing that, if it's not art, if art can't be the thing that brings us together, then nothing can. Absolutely. This is our last hope. So that's my focus from now on. Enough with religion and politics. Now let's talk about art and literature.
Oh, very interesting. So you have the 3 divinity degrees and the writer's degree. You're going to the artist side. So that was the voice of Reza Aslan, author of No God But God and Beyond Fundamentalism. And now I'm going to turn over here to Terry McDermott, longtime LA Times reporter, author of Perfect Soldiers and 101 Theory Drive. You've done a lot of, your range of reporting is amazing. You are you are one of those sort of old-time news reporters that...
I'm a hack.
I guess that's the other way of putting it. But did what he said about art being the only potential bridge?
Without question. If not that, I don't know what. I mean, because there aren't a lot of candidates anymore. We've exhausted most of them. What art? I hadn't thought about this before, but art is really about the creation of myths and the interpretation of them. And the Middle East is suffused in myth. I mean, it's just. It's.
Well, come on, the myths that a majority of Americans live by came from the Middle East.
Yeah, well,
sure, yeah.
we've added a few in the last 10 years.
And I could get in trouble for that statement, couldn't I?
No, when I was reporting Perfect Soldiers, which required a couple of years on the ground in various countries, this is about the 9/11 plot and hijackers, I was just stunned the degree to which facts didn't matter. I mean, they really didn't. You could break your jaw trying to persuade somebody of something for which there was no doubt. And they just wouldn't have it. I mean, they'd almost laugh at you. It was silly to even consider. And I thought, man, what a weird place this is. I mean, these guys, they don't get nothing. They just live in myth. They don't live in the real world. Then I came home and we're invading Iraq. And I go, why are we doing that again? I mean, so we have our own myths that don't comport with reality, and every culture does. But the degree to which myth is important in the Mideast will give you an avenue in, I would think. That's a great idea.
Even when you talk about religion or politics, ultimately you're talking about storytelling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, it's all just sort of how do you create this narrative in order to make so. And I just got back not too long ago too. These are two people who couldn't have more animosity towards each other, the Israelis and the Palestinians, and yet the sort of most popular hip-hop band in Israel is a Palestinian band. The Palestinians just absolutely adore Israeli movies. They can't get enough of them. And then, of course, the writers on both sides are read by both sides, in both Hebrew and in Arabic. So here's these two people who, when it comes to religion and politics, couldn't be further apart. And yet, when it comes to art and culture and literature and movies, love each other's work. Really see each other as very much as one family, one culture. And if that doesn't say it, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you just hear that statement, and I feel like saying, well, up with art and questions about religion and politics.
They share a sense of mythic identification too. They're both victims. And victimhood is one of the hardest things to give up. And they both are probably legitimately victims. And that's why it's so incorrigible. I mean, you just can't get through that. Nobody's going to give up that identification.
No, it's right. Once you're saying that actually that battle has a lot to do with myth, and I will say, I mean, in America, when I watch folks who have the victim myth, it is it's easier, I think, to give up a triumphant myth. There are dents in that, but victimhood is almost undentable.
Because you're already at the bottom. You've given up everything else.
You can make anything fit it, I think. Right. RezaAslan.com, and I'm going to spell it for you. REZAASLAN. RezaAslan.com. And your site is cool, Reza, in that I actually went down and looked who made this site, because you can see in the site shift in a way. In other words, it's got plenty about religion and about your books and so on, but it's really attempting to deal with the new media.
Thanks for noticing that, actually, because I actually just put some work into that, so I appreciate that. No, it is, and I provide a tweetwire service for people who are on Twitter who want to know what's going on in arts and entertainment and news and politics around the Middle East at ASLAN Media, and the same with my Facebook site. But yeah, absolutely, I'm trying to really, it's all the same thing. It's all about building bridges, right? It's just how are you going? What kind of material are you going to use? And you got yours is T. McDermott,
TMCDERMOTT, tmcdermott.com. Now, not quite as flashy as Reza's, but a ton. No, but I mean a phenomenal ton of content.
Yeah, well, I did mine myself, and I think it shows.
Well, no, but if you go down the left side of yours, it looks like it has almost every article you've ever written, which is on a phenomenal range of
not
subjects.
even close.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I mean,
but hundreds.
Hundreds. I've been typing for a long time.
I gotta ask you, Terry. You were a noted, award-winning reporter for the LA Times for years. Mm-hmm. We all hear about the big picture of what's going wrong at the folks who are hosting this book festival. I mean,
what the hell?
If you give the short answer, how did Terry McDermott no longer? How come Terry?
In other words,
is
there anybody left at the Times? Is what Terrence
Well,
is
what I was
asking.
told was that was a luxury they could no longer afford.
Because you traveled around the world and did real reporting?
Well, lots of people do real reporting, but I spent a lot of money.
Oh.
When I did the 9/11 stuff for the paper, the assignment, literally, the assignment was go wherever you need to go, stay as long as you need to stay. If an editor said that today, he would be struck by lightning. Mm-hmm. It just wouldn't happen.
And that was 8 years ago. 9 years ago.
Yeah. And I spent 3.5 years on that. And nobody ever said, what do you got? Where is it? I mean, my editor would call me up, really. I'd be like in Cairo, at 11 o'clock, and what time it was here, and he'd go, I've had a really bad day, Dave, and budget meetings. Tell me something cool. What'd you learn today? And that's the thing. I mean, you're there, you're somewhere, and if you're available to it, you'll learn something really cool every day. Something really depressing, something maddening, something fascinating, but something. Lots of somethings. And, you couldn't. It's a privilege, really. I mean, for a journalist, for an old hack, to get the opportunity to do that.
And now this book that you've just written, 101 Theory Drive, a neuroscientist's quest for memory, much closer to home.
Yeah,
but no less time. You've been working on that one how long?
Actually, before Perfect Soldiers came out, I went to the lab in early 2005, and it was supposed to be for a few weeks or a couple months.
It was going to be an article?
Yeah, it was going to be an article, and then it was going to be, he said, well, at the end of the first year, I thought, well, pretty soon, at the end of the second year. I was following a project in a neuroscience
tell people about
lab.
that, yeah.
It's interesting, actually, because we can go back to this about people's sense of who they are, because the way memories form has a lot to do with that. All I wanted to do was tell a story about how memory works and fails, and how we did it. And I thought, well, that's a science article, but I wanted to have a story.
Good for the book.
Perfect for
the book. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I went there.
And his name is?
His name is Gary Lynch. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Gary and I will be at the Central Library Wednesday night.
That's right.
7
I
o'clock.
wanted to say that.
And if it'd be worth it to come just to listen to Gary talk. This guy is the best talker, bar none, I've ever heard in my life. He knows everything. It's pathetic.
Okay.
I've been reading serious literary fiction my whole life, and I think I know a lot about it. He could just walk rings around me. And this is after, 12, 14 hours in the lab doing neuroscience.
Wow. So that is Wednesday night at the Central Library.
Right, the Allowed series.
The
Allowed series. Go online, lapl.com, I believe.
Yeah,
it's .com, isn't it? lapl.com, Los Angeles Public Library. Look for the Allowed series, and if you can get in on this one, sign up. If you can't, because you've gotten a lot of research, these things are free, and people all get in off the waiting list.
Right.
Off the waiting line.
In fact, it is sold out, so they won't let you get tickets. But they told me, all right, tell people to come because you always get in.
I've never not gotten in to one of these.
There's a relationship between these two things. And
let me just tell people again, this is Reza Aslan, Terry McDermott, I'm Terrence McNally.
One of the things Lynch has discovered over time is that memories, as they're, he studies the mechanism, or has tried to find the mechanism by which memories are encoded. I mean, it's made in an instant, lasts a lifetime, you have infinite capacity. That's a pretty good trick, right? So how does that happen? So that's what he's been studying. One of the things that happens when sensory data comes in, completely apart from anything you want, it gets sorted and categorized. The machinery of the brain just goes to work on it. Putting it here, there, it's all overlaps. I mean, and we used to, I went to school, we studied, the evil of stereotyping, and it is a horrible thing, but you honestly couldn't walk down the street without the ability to stereotype, and not just people, but everything. I mean, you don't really want to know the individuality of everything. Mm-hmm. You couldn't
function. You wouldn't be able to keep walking.
Right. And
Too much information.
So, the problem is in us. I mean, it's not. We didn't acquire it. It's part of our architecture.
Yeah. The other thing that because I've done some work on this as well, is that, and this is Damasio's work at USC. You can't make a rational decision, in a sense, because everything goes through it gets an emotional tag before it ever gets to your rational brain. Correct?
Yeah, it's all the brain doesn't separate any of that stuff. I mean, it's all intermeshed, and in fact, what they haven't been able to do, and there's a lot of, thousands of people working on this protein, this molecule, but the larger brain issues haven't had the tools to attack yet. They haven't had the knowledge to attack. But I think once they get some of this other stuff out of the way, and some of the stuff that Lynch is doing, trying to actually map memories in the brain, so you can actually look and see a physical map of a memory. Once that becomes widely available, then you'll be able to back up and look at some bigger issues. What invokes this, and when does the memory come in? When does it not? It's an interconnection, and so it's pretty hard to untangle.
I see. In other words, even when I said something precedes something, you're saying maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, that's our labeling.
Right.
Our labeling. We may label one first.
Well, the simplest cognitive act. You're walking down the street. You've got literally thousands of neurons firing. Every neuron has 40,000 proteins in it. Those proteins make machines. Some of them take stuff apart, some of them put stuff together, some of them are complementary, some of them are opposed. And every protein is doing that. I mean, it's just a vast machine in there. You're not even, thank God you're not aware of it. So, to say what comes first or second, it's a mess. I mean, I'm not, not at all surprised that sometimes it breaks. I'm really surprised that it ever works.
By the way, that is something not just about the mind, but about the body. The fact that we don't break down more, the fact that these masses of protoplasm are able to function the way we do is a miracle every moment. If you were to, either one take it first and then go back and forth, what should we be doing?
Go ahead.
Do you want to take this one?
I actually have no expertise about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, none at all. I can talk about radical Islam much more comfortably.
They're absolutely linked together. We used to say in the 80s and 90s that the road to peace in the Middle East goes through Jerusalem, and then sometime around the last decade we kind of lost sight of that. But it's as true today as it's ever been. And I think President Obama recognizes this, thank God, that unless that there is a lasting, equitable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and by the way, that solution may not be a two-state solution. But unless there is some equitable solution to that conflict, and this is a conflict that's going to essentially poison everything, and this isn't Reza and Terry talking about this. This is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen. This is the commander of CENTCOM, David Petraeus. This is the National Security Advisor, Jim Jones. These are not peaceniks. These are not lefties who are saying, America's national security interests are damaged by the continuation of this conflict. And until we figure out what to do about this thing, we're not going to be able to do any of the things that we want to do in the Middle East. So hopefully we have an administration now that understands this.
Yeah, the degree to which the conflict pervades everything else is breathtaking. And I don't think most people appreciated that degree, and I was one of them, actually. But, I mean, I've been doing some work recently on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the 9/11 mastermind.
Sure.
And his principal motivation for everything he's done, and he's done a lot of terrorism in the last 15 years, is he hates Israel. I mean, Ramzi Youssef, his nephew, and he conspired to bomb the World Trade Center the first time. You know how Ramzi picked that as a target?
No.
A high school buddy told him a lot of Jews were there.
Oh, my God.
So you hear all
and
this,
that worked again a few years later as a reason.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You hear all these things about, Muhammad Atta hated modernism. He hated America's corruption. He could give a shit.
He hated our freedoms.
Yeah,
that a lot of people say, and I think they're right, they're like, oh, please, putting too much weight on this issue. Do you really think that if there was peace between the Israelis and Palestinians tomorrow that bin Laden would pack up his Kalashnikov and go home? Of course not. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about, the fact is that bin Laden has managed to use this conflict to rally millions of people who would otherwise have nothing in common with him, who would despise everything else about his ideology, but who share this fundamental grievance to his cause. Take away the cause, you take away the movement. You can't you can't just get rid of Al-Qaeda by creating a Palestinian state. You can make Al-Qaeda irrelevant, though, by doing so,
right.
and that's what we can do. That's what we can hope for.
You and I have spoken several times on the program over the years, but the thing that I always say is that first day of 9/11, I said to myself, what is the question here? And the question is, have we done everything we can to minimize, the risk of terrorism? And it seems to me the key thing is to make terrorists pariahs in their own communities rather than leaving them causes, grievances, resentments on which they can build.
And here's the sad part. That's a necessary first step. After that, you got the real problem, the problem within Islam. This has to come from within. Well, actually, even the vast majority of moderate Muslims, they can't even approach the radicals until we get rid of the grievances. They're just seen as mouthpieces.
Yeah, and I think that
Uncle Tom's, right?
Yeah.
I think that there is something actually that the West can do, and that is to sort of no longer be kind of the polarizing element in this, because like all cults, you're an oppositional force. You need something to react against, and at this point, throughout the first, the previous administration, which used the exact same religiously polarizing rhetoric, right, this exact same cosmic worldview as Bin Laden, it just fed into that mindset. I was just saying just a little while ago that, when George Bush gave that historic speech immediately after September 11th to both houses of Congress, when he said, quote, "In this conflict there is no neutral ground. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists." A reporter for Al Jazeera gave that quote to Bin Laden, and Bin Laden's response was, quote, "He took the words right out of my mouth." Well, if you've taken the words out of Bin Laden's mouth, you've already lost. So, Obama's got a long way to go, but at the very least he's changed the rhetoric, and that's made this radical movement far less relevant than it was even a decade ago.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap up. Do you have any more panels left, Reza?
I do. I've got one at 2 o'clock, The Realities Facing the Middle East, I believe, at Haynes 39.
And Terry, you're rushing over to join TT and Terry and Sean.
I actually know the name of it, which they didn't.
Right. And it is?
It's Reason, Time, and Memory.
Okay, and it's in Humanities.
Time, Reason, and Memory.
Humanities 851. So again, the books are Beyond Fundamentalism by Reza ASLAN, and 101 Theory Drive and Neuroscientist Quest for Memory. The websites are rezaaslan.com. That's REZAASLAN.com, and T. McDermott, TMCDERMOTT.com. You can listen to this week's conversation and many others at any time during the week by linking to the podcast. You can sign up to have it delivered to you weekly. You can do that either at TerrenceMcNally.net. That's one word, TerrenceMcNally.net. Or at iTunes. You can also sign up to have an email that I send out every week telling you who's going to be on and what we're going to talk about. That either at the website or email me at temcnally@mac.com. And folks,
let's hear it for the engineers.
Thanks to the engineers. Thanks to the team. We got to go.
Thanks.